of the more important aspects of doing the meditation is being able to recognize hindrances when they arise. If you can't recognize a hindrance, then you're going to keep getting caught by the hindrances, and that affects the way you see the world around you in a negative way. One of the reasons that the hindrances are so important is because a hindrance is where your belief of I am that is stored. That's where your false idea of a belief in itself is stored. Every time you take any thought or feeling personally, that is a hindrance. Generally speaking, the Buddha talked about 5 different kinds of hindrances. He said you have lust, greed, I want it, mine. Hatred, aversion, I don't want it, mine. Sleepiness, dullness, mine. Restlessness, anxiety, mind, and doubt. Now, when any of these arise, the reason they're called hindrances is because it takes your whole attention, and you don't even know where you are anymore because this hindrance grabs you and starts pushing you around. Now, what happens when a hindrance arises is there is a feeling that arises, and the feeling is unpleasant. And right after the feeling arises, then you have thoughts about why you don't like that feeling. Now, first you have craving. You have the I like it or I don't like it mind. Right after that, you have the thoughts about why you like or dislike that feeling. And then you have your habitual tendency of every time this feeling arises, then I always act that way. Now, all of this is a big problem when you're trying to do any kind of mental development or have a happy life. Because things don't happen the way we want them to. We have things that happen that are very hard to endure, difficult. And the more we identify with those thoughts and those feelings, the more pain we cause ourselves. So what we need to do is learn how to recognize the hindrance when it arises. And we have to know what to do when that hindrance arises. Now, this happens for everybody, and it doesn't matter whether you're sitting in meditation or you're doing your daily activities. You're going to have hindrances come up occasionally. Somebody comes up and says something you don't like, then your mind goes to that dislike, and now you get in a war with that other person. You start fighting with them. But what we have to do is recognize that when another person comes up and they say something that's not particularly nice, is that that's their opinion, and they can have their opinion all they want. That doesn't mean that you have to take it and try to change their opinion. You don't have to fight with them. You don't have to take their anger and make it your anger and throw it back at them. What you have to learn how to do is recognize how you're causing yourself pain and how to let go of that pain. So this particular sutta deals with it a little bit. This sutta is kind of peculiar in some ways, because as you go to the different ways that it talks about letting go of the hindrances, it goes further and further away from the Buddha's actual teaching. And one of the things that has happened with some of the suttas is that it has been influenced by commentaries, and it's been influenced by other people that are practicing a different kind of meditation than what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught a tranquil insight meditation. An awful lot of people right now are practicing an absorption kind of concentration. Anyway, what happened right after the Buddha died, about 200 years after he died, was there was a lot of Brahmins that started taking on robes and claiming they were Buddhist monks, but they were teaching their Brahmin religion. And at the time, King Asoka found out about this, and he set up a council so that they could go over what the Buddha's teachings actually was. But he would ask anyone who had robes what the Buddha's teachings was, and if they didn't know, he would disrobe them. But some of those teachings stuck. And even to this day, after 6 or 12, some countries they've had up to 14 Buddhist councils to try to get out the mistakes. There's still some mistakes in it. And this particular sutta is one. The first part is great, so we'll go through that. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Sawati in Jeta's Grove, and in Dandika's Park. There he addressed the monks thus. Monks, venerable sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this. Monks, when a monk is pursuing the higher mind, from time to time he should give attention to some signs. What are they? Here, monks, when a monk is giving attention to some sign, owing to that sign there arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion. Now, thoughts of desire, we all know what that is. And thoughts of hate, we all know what that is. What are thoughts of delusion? You already know this stuff.
You can tell me not to answer if you want.
Let other people answer for a little while, okay? I'll give you a hard question.
Okay.
Delusion is always the idea that this is mine personally. This is who I am. When you let go of delusion, you change your perspective from I am, I want or I don't want to it's only this want or it's only this not want. So you say, I am angry, or I really want this. When you say, I really want this, you're taking that desire and that feeling of desire personally. And anytime you take anything personally, you're seeing it in the wrong way. Everything that arises in your mind, any feeling that arises in your body, is part of an impersonal process. It's not yours. When you're sitting and you have a pain arise in your knee, did you say, well, I haven't had a pain arise in my knee for a while? Might as well have it arise now. No, it arose because the conditions are right for it to arise. As you start to see that this is an impersonal process, then you let go of that tightness in mind. And what you're doing is letting go of the craving. The craving is the start of the I am that. Now, every time you let go of a craving, you relax the tension and tightness in your head and in your body and in your mind. Every time you relax, you'll feel your mind kind of expand open a little bit and become calm. At that moment, your mind is very pure. Your mind is very alert. Your mindfulness is very quick. And you bring that attention, you bring that kind of mind back to your object of meditation. So what you're doing is you're letting go of the craving, and every time you let go of craving, you purify your mind. A little bit. Craving is not particularly strong, but it is particularly persistent. It keeps arising over and over and over again. So we have a lot of opportunities to see how when anything arises and it pulls your attention to it, there is tension and tightness. And you need to recognize that, relax, smile, come back to your object of meditation. That's practicing the 6 R's. This eventually leads to a mind that has very sharp awareness in it. So you can recognize when your mind starts to grab onto things, and you can start relaxing and letting go right then. This helps to develop your personality so that there's more balance in it. You don't have the high highs, you don't get into the low lows. You have a mind that's more in balance all the time. You're still going to have some emotional highs and lows, but they're going to be little ones. They're not going to be the kind that are going to affect you for a week or 10 days or 2 weeks or a month. It's going to affect you for a shorter and shorter period of time because you get familiar with how these kind of hindrances arise. The biggest hindrance that we have is restlessness. Restlessness is all of our distracting thoughts. But the thing with the hindrances is that they don't come just one at a time. They like to gang up. They like to kick you when you're down. So you can have restlessness arise, and then you can have dislike of that feeling. So now you have 2 hindrances for the price of 1. So you have to be able to recognize first that you're thinking. And you're thinking about feeling. And that feeling has dislike wrapped around it. It's the aversion. Now, when a feeling arises, the truth is, it's there. What you do with what arises in the present moment dictates what happens in the future. As you start to lovingly accept that feeling is there and it's okay for that feeling to be there, then you relax the tension and tightness caused by the aversion to that. Now you smile and you come back to your object of meditation. You have learned a great lesson in how mind's attention works. And you've let go of that identification with that feeling and those thoughts. Now, in the instructions, I always tell you about what to do when a sensation arises in your body. And that is to let go of the thinking, relax. See that tight mental fist wrapped around that feeling, let it be and relax. A mistake that people make, and it's quite often, is that they try to use this as a club to make the sensation go away. Trying to beat that and trying to control the sensation. And it's not for that. It doesn't work. Guaranteed. What you need to do is allow the sensation to be there. It's all right for that sensation to be there. It has to be all right because it's the truth. It's there. So, anytime you try to control the truth or make the truth be the way you want it to be, you're fighting with the truth. Anytime you fight with the truth, you can look forward to suffering happening. So, when you let go of wanting this sensation to be anything other than it is, and you allow it to be there by itself, one of two things will eventually happen. Either that sensation will go away by itself, or it won't. But if it doesn't, your mind has such balance that it doesn't pull your mind to that sensation. You just recognize it as being there. Now, with that said, we have to start talking a little bit about the difference between real pain and meditation pain. While you're sitting in meditation and a sensation arises, it can seem like it's a real pain. But when you get up and you start walking and stretch out a little bit, in 10 or 15 seconds you forget that you even had the pain. Then that is meditation pain. A real pain is you have that pain. You get up and you start walking and the pain doesn't go away. Now, if you have that kind of pain, don't sit like that again. You don't need to sit to make pain arise. Sit in a comfortable way. You can actually hurt yourself if you start forcing yourself to sit in a particular way. I know a lot of people that have done that sort of thing. So when a hindrance arises, it always has that false idea of I am that attached to it. Every time you recognize that your mind has been distracted, at first when you're sitting, your mind might be distracted for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes before you actually even notice that your mind has gone away. And that's fine. As soon as you recognize that your mind has been away, then you practice your 6 R's. You recognize, you release, you relax, re-smile, return to your object of meditation, keep that meditation going, repeat it. The nature of hindrances is they don't go away right away. And this is a good thing, it's not a bad thing. Because the hindrance is showing you where your attachment is, it is teaching you how to recognize this and how to let it go. So every time your mind bounces away from your object of meditation and comes to the hindrance, your job as a meditator is to see how that happened. What happened first? What happened after that? What happened after that? As you become more familiar with the process, you won't be caught so long with the hindrance. But you'll start to notice something that happened right before your mind got pulled away. Let's say you have sloth and torpor, and you start noticing how the sloth and torpor works. But what you start seeing is you're doing this, and then you're caught for a little while, and then and then try to straighten up and try to push your energy to make it go, and then So what happened right before you got into that sleepiness? Your back slumped a little bit. So you take that as your sign. Okay, whenever you see your back slump, now it's time to straighten up and come back to your object of meditation. And then right before your back slumps, there's something else that happens, and you'll be able to recognize that. And then as you become more familiar with how the process works, you'll be able to see it more and more quickly, and you won't get caught first. So the sloth and torpor, even though it's a pain, and it's not a fun thing, it is a teacher for you. It's showing you how this hindrance works. And as you become more familiar with how the hindrances work, you start to regard them as being friends. They are your best friends because they're teaching you how your mind works. Now, if you're practicing any form of one-pointed concentration, that will suppress the hindrances. It won't allow them to come up. And your mind can stay very happy and very uplifted for long periods of time, but you're not learning anything about how mind's attention moves. And that's how you truly purify your mind. Not by suppressing for a period of time, because eventually there's going to be something happens that your concentration is not going to suppress it, and there's going to be an immense amount of suffering that happens because you're not able to recognize how that process works, and you start identifying very heavily with all the thoughts and all the feelings. So there's no purity of mind that happens when you're practicing the one-pointed concentration, as far as recognizing how dependent origination actually works. And dependent origination, the Buddha spent 45 years talking about the Four Noble Truths and dependent origination. He spent thousands and thousands of hours explaining how this works. And the reason that he explained this is because it really does work. It's not a maybe. This really, really does work, and I don't want you to believe me at all. Isn't that weird? See it for yourself. Become more familiar with how mind's attention moves. Now, one of the important aspects of the meditation is the smile. When you have a smile in your mind, a smile in your eyes, a smile in your lips, and a smile in your heart, your mindfulness is exceptionally sharp at that time. It's real easy to see when a hindrance comes and starts grabbing on and pulling your mind down. It's real easy to recognize. And it's also very easy to let it go. Anytime you see your mind getting serious about anything, that means that there is an attachment to this false idea of I am that. I am this feeling, I am these thoughts, and this is the way I am. It's full of concepts and ideas and projections and all kinds of things that don't have anything to do with the reality of the present moment. Anytime you get caught up in analyzing, in thinking about, in conceptualizing, that is a source of suffering. And the tighter you hold on to concepts and ideas, the more pain you cause yourself. So, what to do? Don't be serious with this stuff. And I say this stuff meaning every different aspect of your life. Anytime you get over serious about something, that means you got an attachment. Anytime you have any repeat thoughts, that means you've got an attachment. And that attachment is always, I am that. What is the cause of I am? It starts at breathing. As you learn to relax, but it's not only relax, it's let go, relax, smile, return to loving kindness. As you learn to do that not only with your sitting practice, but with your daily activities, then changes start to happen. And as the changes start to happen, people will start coming up to you and saying, "Whoa, what are you doing different than you used to do? You seem to be a lot happier than you used to be." And that is because you're learning how this process works and you're not getting caught near as much as you used to. Okay, I got almost 3 sentences into this today before I took off on that. Okay, here are monks when a monk is giving attention to some sign, and owing to that sign there arise in him evil and unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion. Then he should give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome. Harmonious practice in the Eightfold Path is recognizing when there's an unwholesome state arising. What is an unwholesome state? An unwholesome state is anything that has I am that attached to it. It is letting go of that unwholesome state and relaxing. It is bringing up a wholesome state, smiling, and staying with that wholesome state. Now, I just called it harmonious practice. A lot of people know this by right effort. It's not indulging in the pain. It's not fighting with the unwholesome thing that arises. It's simply recognizing it, letting it be, relaxing. Coming back to your wholesome object, staying with your wholesome object. The wholesome object always starts with smiling. But it's also your object of meditation. And continuing with it. As you learn how to do this with your sitting practice, then you start carrying it with you in your daily life. And there are going to be hindrances that arise. Welcome to the real world. But what you do with what arises in the present moment dictates what happens in the future. If you take the hindrance and you run with it and you fight with it and you try to control it, you can look forward to more suffering arising. Or you can see that hindrance arise and you can let it be and relax and smile into it and come back and wish somebody happiness. And you can look forward to having a more and more balanced mind. That's the choice that we have to make. Either we can act the way we always act that causes us pain, or not. The trick is the mindfulness, remembering to observe what your mind is doing in the present moment. As you practice having more and more joy and more smiles in your mind and in your activities, it's much easier to remember your mindfulness and see the pain that you're causing yourself when you get caught, and it's much faster to let it go. I've known people that have taken the feeling of depression and become depressed for weeks. Now, what is the cause of depression? A painful feeling arises. I don't like that. The story about why that depression is there and your habitual tendency. It keeps coming back and coming back. And as you don't like that feeling, and you don't like the story, and you try to control the feeling with your thoughts, the feeling gets bigger and more intense. And as the feeling gets bigger and more intense, your thoughts, your mind tries to control it even more with its thinking. And the feeling gets even bigger until you can't stand it. And then there's some kind of action of going into a room and closing all the windows and telling everybody to leave you alone. But when you start to recognize how mind's attention actually works, then you see the futility of trying to think your feelings. And you start letting go of the thought and you start relaxing, and then you see that feeling for what it is. It's only an unpleasant feeling. Okay, so what? Let it be. Relax. As you bounce back and forth between being on your object of meditation and being with that feeling, as you let go more and more, that feeling becomes weaker, because now it doesn't have anything pushing against it. And if there's nothing pushing against it, it just weakens naturally by itself. And until eventually what will happen is that feeling will become so weak that it will just fade away by itself. And at that time you will have a major sense of relief. Why? Because you've let go of an attachment. You've let go of tight grabbing onto and identifying with that feeling and trying to control it with your thoughts. You've let that go. You've let go of this old habit. As soon as that feeling of relief happens, right after that you have a lot of joy arise. The joyful feeling is an uplifted feeling in your mind and in your body. Very light. But there's a lot of excitement in What do you do when joy arises? You allow that feeling to be there. This is a pleasant feeling. Okay? Painful feeling, pleasant feeling, same coin, different sides. Treat it in the same way. Allow it to be there, relax, come back to your object of meditation. The feeling of joy will fade away. You will feel very, very tranquil, very much at ease in your mind and in your body. Your mind will be very collected, your mind will be very composed, and it will stay on the object of meditation without any effort at all. But because this is your first experience of it, you still will have a distracting thought happen occasionally, not very often, but it will happen. But as soon as you notice that, you let it go immediately and relax. Sometimes it's only half a thought that comes out before you recognize it, or let it be and relax. Come back to your object of meditation. Now what I've just described to you is the experience of the first level of understanding. And this is called a jhana. Jhana is a word that quite often is used, and the definition that's given is that jhana means concentration, and it doesn't. It's a level of your understanding. Why is that level? Why did it happen? Because you learned what a hindrance was and how to let go of the hindrance. You become more intelligent because now you understand this is a process. And you need the hindrances because when your mindfulness slips, you will have another hindrance arise. And then you get to work with this hindrance. Every time a hindrance arises, it helps improve your mindfulness and it helps you become much more alert to how mind's attention moves. And when you let that go, another level of your understanding is gained. So the hindrances are a very necessary part of the practice. Now there's some aspects in this particular sutta that when they're talking about the hindrances and how unruly they can seem to be and how tough they are, it says that you clench your teeth and push your tongue up against the roof of your mouth and crush mind with mind. And that's what it actually says. But in another sutta, it says that the Buddha tried that and it didn't work. So this was just taken, this part, it's word for word from the other sutta, it's taken and just added in there. But when I was in Burma, that was the most famous thing that the Burmese teachers were showing the students, how to crush mind with mind. There was a kind of practice that they take joy in having painful feeling arise, and it doesn't lead to peace and calm, to my way of thinking. The most important aspect of the Buddha's teaching that you will find, or one of the important aspects, I guess you could say, is that the Buddha was always teaching us how to open up and accept, not how to close down and control. The Buddha was always trying to explain to us how to do this and become more calm. Now, when he's talking about the Four Noble Truths, there is suffering. There's no getting around it. We don't get the things we want to get. We get what we don't want. We have all kinds of painful things that arise. There is suffering in life. Because you have a human body, there is suffering. I mean, you go in the kitchen and somebody dropped one kernel of popcorn on the floor. What does it feel like when you snap? That's painful. But there is a cause of the suffering, and the cause of the suffering is always craving. Craving arises at each one of the links of dependent origination, just like all of the Four Noble Truths do. But the Buddha said that we don't focus on the suffering. He said there's a right way to teach and a wrong way to teach. The wrong way to teach is to focus on suffering. And the right way to teach is focus on the cessation of suffering, which is what I've been showing you. As you recognize the tension and tightness and let it be and relax, smile, come back to your object of meditation, you are practicing the Eightfold Path at that moment. And you are letting go of suffering. And when you do that enough, you'll start to go deeper and deeper into meditation. And your understanding becomes sharper and more clear. You start to see more and more how this process actually does work, and how this is an impersonal process. Everything that happens to us in life is part of an impersonal process. But we always take it to be, this is me, this is mine. As you start developing the smile more and more while you're sitting, while you're walking, while you're doing your daily activities, it helps to improve your mindfulness, your awareness of how everything works. And with that knowledge, you start to unfold the problems of life. You start to see that everything is part of the process. Because if you have eye, color, and form, the eye hitting the color and form causes eye consciousness to arise. The meeting of these three things is called eye contact. With eye contact as condition, eye feeling arises. Eye feeling is pleasant, it's a beautiful sight. Unpleasant, it's an ugly sight. Or neither painful nor pleasant. It's a neutral sight. With eye feeling as condition, eye craving arises. If it's a pleasant feeling, I like it. If it's an unpleasant feeling, I don't like it. With eye craving as condition, clinging arises. Clinging is all of your thoughts, all of your opinions, all of your concepts, all of your ideas, all of the stories about why you like or dislike that feeling. And with clinging as condition, your habitual tendency arises. Your habitual tendency is always the way you always act when this feeling arises. And the way you always act is by trying to control your feeling with your thoughts. So the more you do that, pain you cause yourself. Now the process of practicing the meditation is learning how to recognize this, not only while you're sitting, but all of the time. Meditation is life. Life is meditation. And this means taking it with you wherever you're going. As you learn to develop more and more joy, more and more happiness in your mind gets more and more clear. And with that clarity, you start seeing how these hindrances, when they arise, how they cause us to have so much pain and suffering. And as we become familiar with the process, we start letting go of that pain and suffering more and more easily all the time. And that is the cessation of suffering. That's what this meditation is all about. It's not to fight with the hindrances when they arise. It's to welcome them. Recognize that these friends are coming to help you.
Angels in disguise.
Angels in disguise. That's a good one. They are. And you say, well, why does this one have to keep coming up? I've already let it go. No, you haven't. Not yet. It keeps coming up. It's going to keep coming up until you really let it go. There's no fooling. This is the lesson of Dhamma. Dhamma means the truth. And there's no fooling it.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so what you're doing when you let go of one sign that has unwholesomeness in it and bring up another, when he gives attention to some sign connected with what is wholesome, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to stillness, and collected. Just as a skilled carpenter or his apprentice might knock out, remove, and extract a coarse peg by means of a fine one, so too, when a monk gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, and brought to stillness and composed. Now, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So Enos asked a question earlier about, is this meditation leading us to, in daily life, can we be free, how'd you say it, can we be happy without reaching Nibbana or in the next life?
Yes.
That's the answer.
Definitely you can. But it's a matter of teaching your mind how to be alert, so that you can see how you cause yourself pain, and then you start letting go of that. Your mind starts to become very uplifted, and when that happens, then it's so much easier to notice when these things start to come and start pulling you down. You go, no, we don't need to do that, we'll let that one go too. But being a human being means that there is going to be suffering that happens sometime along the way. There is going to be pain that arises. It doesn't necessarily have to be suffering. Somebody in your family dies. you're not going to be walking around smiling and happy because of the attachment to that person and the dislike of the situation. But as you start to recognize that your mind is very much disliking this situation, that's an aversion. And you have a lot of thoughts about why you don't like that. Then you get to let go of the thoughts, relax, allow that feeling to be there, and relax into that. Now you send love and kind thoughts to yourself, to the other family members, to the person that died. Doesn't matter. But one of the things that happens with grief is that people, they get frustrated, they become very sad, they indulge in the grief because they don't know what to do. They become lost. And what you do always to overcome suffering is learn how to give. And what do you give? You give your kind and loving thoughts. And you give your kind and loving thoughts as much as you can remember to give. And the more you give, the less you are knocked off balance by this big pain. Now that doesn't mean that you're never going to remember the pain. You will, but you won't suffer because of it, because you're not identifying with it now. It was a sad thing that happened. That's true. And welcome to life. There are going to be things that are sad that happen. But as you learn how the process works, your suffering becomes less and less, and you start to gain more of a balanced mind. And with that balanced mind comes a relief that you can't find any other way, that I know of anyway. And with that relief, there is a kind of contentment, even in very difficult situations. Yeah.
So this is demonstrating a living practice, an engaged
Definitely.
Dhamma.
Definitely, this is a living practice. That's why I said meditation is life. Life is meditation. You have to be able to recognize what your mind is doing in the present moment and how you cause your own pain. And stop being so serious with it. Start laughing with it. Start smiling into it. And that puts balance into your mind. And that's what meditation is about. Learning how to have that balance. Learning how to recognize what your mind is doing. So it's not always flying around doing whatever it wants to do. The more you practice letting go and relaxing, the more you start to see the importance of keeping your practice going all the time. And when you're practicing the 6 R's, it starts to become more and more a habitual tendency. So you trade your old habits for new habits, your old habits that bring your mind down for new habits that release. And that's what the meditation is about. So the more you can do that, the easier life becomes, even though we're going to have those highs and lows. This is very much a living process. I used to become very frustrated after 20 years of practice and doing a meditation retreat where I was moving very, very, very slowly. And I was Okay, now we're done with the retreat, and the teacher says, now you're off retreat, be mindful. He never explained what mindfulness was. Not really. And how does moving super slow relate to working with your daily life? This practice, what it does is it keeps you in your daily life, but makes you more aware while you're living of how you cause yourself suffering. Okay? Any other questions?
But something you brought up, there's that thread going about that people are all, oh, we can't be happy people. I can't joy because then this is some kind of an attachment to joy, and then people are all concerned. I can't play music because it's too joyful or whatever. But isn't it really
you become a lot more creative when you start getting into this positive. And the attachment to joy is the very thing that will make the joy disappear.
So anyway, the point I was getting to is the understanding that all this is impermanent. Isn't that what keeps it from the attachment? That thinking, like when you have a joyful feeling, the clinging is wanting this feeling to stay and not recognizing that it's impermanent. So the idea that I'm presenting here is that we can be extremely joyful in the moment that's happening, while clearly understanding that this is an impermanent moment. This is going to pass and fade away.
Well, the real attachment to joy is I am that.
Right.
It is the craving. You can have joy and it can last for a lot longer when you let go of trying to hold on to it, trying to make it stay. You can't. But the kind of contentment that arises when this joy fades away is very strong. And it's okay because you're developing your equanimity. And that is the highest feeling that we can have. So why don't we share some merit? May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we thus acquired for the acquisition of all comfort.